They laughed when she stepped up to the firing line. The elite shooters mocked her worn boots and simple clothes, but as Rebecca Porter raised her grandfather's rifle, a hush fell over the range. No one expected what would happen next. One shot that would shatter every assumption about who belongs and who doesn't. One moment that would leave them speechless with a lesson in quiet strength they'd never forget. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories travel. The morning sun painted Rebecca Porter's kitchen in soft gold as she prepared for what she knew would be another test. Not of her shooting, she'd been doing that since she could hold a rifle steady, but of her dignity. Family photographs lined the walls showing 5 generations of Porter marksmen. Weathered faces, proud stances, and always that same rifle passed down through time. At 35, Rebecca's hands bore the calluses of someone who worked the land, her face carrying that natural beauty that comes from honest living rather than expensive products. As she touched the worn stock of her rifle, memories flooded back. She was 8 years old again, standing in the backyard with Grandpa Joe. The rifle seemed enormous in her small hands. "It's too heavy, Grandpa," she'd whimpered, arms trembling. "That's because you're trying to hold it with your arms, sweetheart," he'd said, kneeling beside her. "Here, let it rest against your shoulder. Feel how the earth holds you up. Let the earth hold the rifle too." He'd guided her hands, showed her how to breathe. "The rifle isn't separate from you, Rebecca. When you shoot, you're not just pulling a trigger, you're releasing a part of yourself into the world." That first shot had missed the tin can by a mile, but Grandpa Joe had smiled anyway. "Perfect," he'd said. "Now you know what missing feels like. Tomorrow we'll find out what hitting feels like." Her phone buzzed, pulling her from the memory. "Morning, Dad. You sure about this competition practice, Beck?" Her father's voice carried that familiar mix of pride and concern. "I've been shooting since I was 8, Dad." "I know, sweetheart. You shoot better than all of us combined. But these competition folks, they're not always welcoming to outsiders, especially women who look like they just stepped off the farm." Rebecca finished smiling despite herself. The silence on the line confirmed what they both knew. This wasn't Rebecca's first rodeo with people who judged books by their covers. "Don't worry, Dad. I'm not going there to make friends, just to practice for regionals." After ending the call, Rebecca walked to the old cabinet that housed her grandfather's rifle. Not some fancy modern piece with all the bells and whistles, but a classic that had been meticulously maintained and upgraded over generations. She ran her fingers along the worn stock, remembering her grandfather's words. "A good shot isn't about expensive gear, Rebecca. It's about patience, breathing, and knowing exactly who you are when you squeeze that trigger." She loaded her equipment into her mud-splattered pickup truck. No fancy gun cases or designer bags, just practical gear that had served her well for years. As she drove toward the range, she thought about all the times she'd been underestimated. Veterinary school hunting camps, local competitions, always the same dismissive looks, the same patronizing offers of help. The Precision Shooting Club sprawled across manicured acres, its parking lot filled with luxury vehicles that made her truck stand out like a sore thumb. The clubhouse, all gleaming glass and polished wood, displayed trophies and photographs of past champions, almost exclusively men in expensive tactical gear. "Membership card," the attendant asked, barely glancing up from his magazine. "Just need a day pass for the long-range area." His eyes flicked over her simple clothes, worn jeans, flannel shirt, work boots. "That's $75. Sure you want the long-range section? The beginner area might be more suitable." Rebecca slid her credit card across the counter without comment. She'd saved specifically for this to practice at proper competition, distances for the upcoming regional championship. At the long-range section, 3 men were already stationed with equipment that probably cost more than her truck. Their rifles gleamed with every possible accessory, their shooting jackets adorned with sponsor patches. Rebecca chose the position farthest from them and began her methodical setup. "Well, look what wandered in from the farm," a voice stage whispered, loud enough to ensure she heard. "Someone should tell her this isn't the place for Grandpa's hunting rifle." The comments came from a tall man whose jacket was covered in sponsor patches, designer sunglasses perched on his head, even in the shade. His rifle alone probably cost more than Rebecca made in 3 months at the veterinary clinic. "Think she's lost?" Another voice chimed in. "Probably saw shooting and thought it was for tin cans." Added a third. Rebecca continued her preparation, checking wine, flags downrange, adjusting her scope. She'd heard it all before, the same dismissive attitude she'd encountered her whole life. Men who assumed that because she was a simple woman from a rural background, she couldn't possibly understand precision shooting. "Hey there," the sponsored shooter approached. Looking down at her, "I'm Travis Elite Precision Team Captain. You sure you are in the right place? This is long-range precision shooting, not exactly for beginners." "I'm aware," Rebecca replied evenly. Travis studied her rifle with barely concealed condescension. "That's vintage, your dad's old hunting rifle." "Grandfather's," she corrected. "Been in the family for 5 generations." The other 2 men had joined them now. Derek and Mark, she'd later learn, all wearing the same expression of amused superiority. "You know," Derek offered, "there's a shop in town that rents proper precision rifles. Might save you some embarrassment." "What distance are you planning to shoot?" Mark asked. "Starting at 600 yards, then moving to 800, Rebecca answered. The men exchanged glances, eyebrows raised in mock surprise. 600 yards with that setup. Travis whistled. "That's ambitious." "Listen, sweetheart," Derek interjected. "The bullet drop alone at that distance. It's not something you can just figure out on the fly." Rebecca had heard enough. She settled into position and began her routine, the same one she'd practiced for 27 years. She started with 100-yard groups to verify her zero, then moved to 300, each group tighter than the last. The men's chatter quieted slightly as they noticed her consistent accuracy, though she could still hear their murmured comments. "Not bad for a woman. Probably just lucky shots. Yeah, wait till she tries real distance." When Rebecca prepared for 600 yards, Travis approached again. "Look, I admire your determination, but this is where things get serious. Why don't you let me show you proper form?" "I appreciate the offer," Rebecca said quietly, "but I'll manage." Travis's smile turned sharp. "Tell you what, let's make this interesting. Hit the 600-yard steel plate just once. If you do, I'll personally sponsor your membership here. And if I miss, you pack up that antique and admit you're out of your league." Rebecca looked at the small target, 600 yards downrange, a challenging shot even for experienced marksmen. She thought of all the times she'd been told she didn't belong, that she was too poor, too simple, too female for serious shooting. "One shot," she said. Travis's grin widened. "One shot? That's cocky even for one shot," Rebecca repeated. "But if I make it you and your friends spend an hour learning proper shooting technique from me." The group erupted in laughter. "Deal!" Travis exclaimed, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes. "This is too good. Have you ever been doubted because of how you looked?" "What would you do in her shoes?" "Walk away quietly. Stay and let your skills speak. Drop your answer in the comments, we're reading." Everyone, Rebecca ignored their amusement and settled into position. She began her breathing routine, feeling the familiar meld between shooter and rifle. Through her scope, she found the steel plate a small circle against the hillside. The men fell silent as she made minute adjustments for wind and distance. Time slowed as she found that perfect moment between heartbeats. In that moment, she was 8 years old again, hearing Grandpa Joe's voice. "The rifle isn't separate from you, Rebecca. When you shoot, you're releasing a part of yourself into the world." In that moment, Rebecca wasn't just a simple woman at a shooting range. She was every person who'd been mocked for being too poor, every individual forced to prove their worth, every quiet soul with unexpected talent waiting to be unleashed. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report cracked across the range, followed immediately by the distinctive ring of lead striking steel, a perfect hit. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. Rebecca calmly ejected the spent casing and began reloading. That was luck," Travis stammered. Without responding, Rebecca fired again. Another ring. Then a third shot, a fourth, a fifth. 5 shots, 5 hits, not a single miss. When she finally looked up, the mockery had vanished from their faces, replaced by something she rarely saw, directed at her genuine respect. "Who are you?" Travis asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rebecca Porter," she said simply. Someone who learned to shoot before she learned to brag about it. The next hour found these elite shooters, men who'd spent thousands on equipment and training, taking lessons from a woman they dismissed as too simple, too poor to belong at their range. Rebecca showed them her breathing technique, her method for reading wind, the importance of consistent form over expensive gear. "Your problem isn't equipment," she explained, demonstrating her stance. "It's fundamentals. Watch my breathing pattern. You make it look effortless, Derek commented, adjusting his position to match hers. Not effortless, Rebecca corrected. Fundamental. My grandfather taught me that mastery comes from perfecting basics, not collecting expensive toys. Mark finally asked the question they were all thinking, where did you learn to shoot like this? Behind my family's barn, Rebecca answered. With targets made from old cans and a father who believed his daughter could do anything his sons could. As the lesson concluded, Travis approached her, his earlier arrogance replaced by humility. That regional championship next month, I'll be competing too. Would you consider, our precision team would be honored if you join us. Rebecca smiled slightly. The same team that thought I was too simple, too poor to shoot here 2 hours ago? Travis had the grace to look embarrassed. Sometimes it takes a single shot to shatter preconceptions. We were wrong, I was wrong. Apology accepted, Rebecca said, gathering her equipment. But I have other plans. Other plans. I'm opening a free shooting program for girls from families like mine. Girls who might never get the chance to discover their talent because they don't look the part or can't afford the fancy equipment. The men stood silent, absorbing her words. You know what? Travis said finally. Count me in. I'd like to help sponsor that program. Me too, Derek added quickly. Make it 3. Mark chimed in. Rebecca studied their faces, seeing sincerity where mockery had been. No fancy equipment required, she warned. Just patience fundamentals and respect for every student who walks through the door. Understood. Travis nodded. You've taught us more than marksmanship today. As she walked to her truck, the men followed at a respectful distance. You know, Travis called out, you didn't just prove us wrong today, you taught us something about ourselves. What's that? That we become the very thing we claim to stand against, judging skill by appearance instead of ability. Thank you for the lesson in humility. Rebecca nodded and climbed into her truck. As she drove home, the setting sun painting the sky in brilliant hues. She thought about her grandfather's lessons. True strength wasn't in flashy displays or expensive equipment. It was in quiet confidence, patient practice, and the dignity of letting your actions speak louder than words. But more than that, it was in passing that strength on to others who might never have the chance otherwise. That day at the precision range, a group of elite shooters learned that the most dangerous competitor isn't the one with the most expensive gear. It's the one with quiet strength and nothing to prove. They'd mocked a simple woman, dismissed her as too poor, too unsophisticated for their exclusive world. But with one shot, one perfect, undeniable shot, she left them speechless. It wasn't about vengeance or showing off. It was about the poetic justice of unexpected talent, silencing judgment. About a woman who'd been forced to prove her worth her whole life, finally letting her skills speak louder than their mockery. In the end, those who tried to humiliate her found themselves humbled instead. And Rebecca Porter. She remained exactly who she'd always been, a simple woman with extraordinary talent, proving that true strength whispers while insecurity shouts. But now she had a mission to ensure that no girl would ever have to prove herself the way she had. The free shooting program would be her grandfather's legacy passed on to a new generation of marksmen, or rather, markswomen, who would learn that skill knows no gender, no class, no prejudice. Sometimes the most powerful statement isn't in proving others wrong, it's in staying true to who you are when everyone expects you to be less. Rebecca had known exactly who she was when she squeezed that trigger, a fifth-generation marksman who'd been forced to prove her worth her entire life, but who'd never let others' doubts shake her own certainty. They laughed when she stepped up to the line. They never laughed again. If this story reminds you of your own silent power, don't just scroll, share it. Your voice matters. Have you ever been underestimated? What happened next? Don't forget to subscribe to Sir Alex Stories for more powerful tales like this one.